The 2028 elections are coming up a lot sooner than a lot of people are realizing and thinking about. And because of that, we're talking more and more about the 2028 presidential race and how these races may shape out depending on who the Republican and Democratic nominees are, respectively. So, with this said, we're going to look at a hypothetical matchup today between Governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, and former Governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin. So both of these candidates would be very interesting in this hypothetical matchup because Glenn Youngkin won a state that Joe Biden won by 10% in 2020 and flipped it just a year later in 2021. But Abigail Spanberger won the state in 2025 by over 15 percentage points. Move over to April of 2026, and a redistricting referendum only passes the state by about 2 percentage points, and then the Virginia Supreme Court overturns that. So certainly a really interesting matchup here, and one that shows that Republicans are still capable of winning in Virginia in really good years for them, but still a difficult task nonetheless. So with this said, let's go ahead and jump into today's video and talk about specific states and how I believe they would be characterized depending on the candidates, in this case, Glenn Youngkin and J.B. Pritzker. Now you may be looking at this map and saying, well, there's a lot of states already characterized, and that is true. To save time in the video, I've decided to go ahead and characterize all of the states that are in that safe and likely Republican and Democratic margins. So we're talking about states that have gone to Democrats or Republicans by either 5 to 15% in the case of likely, or safe Republican or Democratic states anywhere above 15 percentage points. One state on this map I still have in a likely as a likely state, but we'll talk about that one because I think it's still a battleground state and one that I still want to discuss on the how close it actually might be. So with that said, let's jump into today's video and talk about the state of Wisconsin. So Donald Trump won the state of Wisconsin in 2024 by 0.86 percentage points, but with a candidate like Glenn Youngkin who can win in deep red Virginia, for example, in those rural communities and really turn out suburban bases, which made him win his governorship in 2021, I believe that we're going to see Glenn Youngkin perform well in Wisconsin, giving him in that lean Republican margin, so anywhere from 1 to 5%. The tilt Republican would be below a percentage point. With that said, let's move over to the state of Michigan, where Donald Trump also won the state of Michigan by 1.4% in 2024, and I think we would see something similar, but actually a larger margin for that of Glenn Youngkin in the state in 2028 in this hypothetical matchup. I think we'd be seeing Glenn Youngkin win by maybe closer to 2 to 3 percentage points, and I think that that's pretty acceptable on that note. So with that, Wisconsin and Michigan both going to the Republicans in that lean Republican margin. With that said, let's move over to the state of Pennsylvania, another state that Donald Trump won in 2024 by 1.7%, and ultimately I believe that Glenn Youngkin could do just that. I don't know how much of a difference his margin would be to that of Trump's, but I still believe he would overperform Trump in that of winning something like 2 percentage points, maybe 2.5% in the state of Pennsylvania, and ultimately winning the state overall. With that said, let's move over to the Commonwealth of Virginia, which was Glenn Youngkin's home state and where he served out his governorship. A lot of people may be saying Glenn Youngkin can win this state, but statistically, that's going to be a really difficult task. Kamala Harris won it by 6 points in 2024. Joe Biden won it by 10 percentage points in 2020. Depending on the environment, of course, it might be possible for him to win, but overall a much more difficult task. However, it's going to be closer than it was in 2024 when Kamala Harris won it by 6 percentage points. I think we're looking at the state going to the Democrats by somewhere like 4 percentage points perhaps in the 2028 matchup, which puts the state of Virginia in that lean Democratic margin. So anywhere from 1 to 5% for Virginia in this 2028 matchup. So with that said, let's move over to the state of North Carolina, a bordering state to Virginia, and one that I believe also would go to the Republicans by a pretty hefty margin, but not quite that likely margin of 5 percentage points. I think we're still looking at a lean margin, but I think we're looking much better than Donald Trump won it by in 2024. I think we're talking about 4 percentage points probably for Glenn Youngkin to win the state of North Carolina. Donald Trump won it by 3.2% in 2024. He won it by 1.3% in 2020. 2016, he won it by 3.7%. So I think we're seeing Glenn Youngkin win this somewhere around 4 percentage points in this race. With that said, let's move over to the state of Georgia, where I believe Glenn Youngkin would also win, and I believe this would again be in that lean Republican margin. So we're talking about anywhere from 1 to 5 percentage points. And I believe that this would be pretty common, pretty acceptable in this hypothetical matchup. Donald Trump won the state by 2.2% in 2024. And Biden only won it by 0.24% in 2020. This certainly is not going to J.B. Pritzker, in my opinion, and instead would go to Glenn Youngkin by probably 2 to 3 percentage points in a 2028 matchup. The state of Arizona, the only state on here that I hadn't previously characterized, but I do think is going to be in that likely Republican margin, so anywhere from 5 to 15%. It's going to be on that lower margin. Donald Trump won the state in 2024 by 5.5%, but I think Glenn Youngkin could win this state by 6, maybe 7% in the state of Arizona in a 2028 matchup, especially against someone like J.B. Pritzker, who I think and I view as a weaker candidate against someone like Glenn Youngkin, who I would view as a stronger candidate in this hypothetical matchup. The last state we have to characterize is the state of Arizona, or the state of Nevada, my apologies, where Donald Trump actually flipped the state for the first time in 2024, winning it by 3.1%. Before that, Biden won it by 2.4% in 2020. Hillary Clinton won it by 2.4% in 2016. With that said, I believe we're also going to see the state of Nevada go to Glenn Youngkin here, but in that lean Republican margin, anywhere from 1 to 5%, probably somewhere around 3%, pretty steady with where Donald Trump won the state in the 2024 presidential race. So, with this said, the final matchup is 312 electoral votes to 226, a map identical to that of Donald Trump's in 2024, except for the margins. Glenn Youngkin able to win in larger margins in areas, and in areas that he didn't win, such as Virginia, making it much more competitive than previously thought, and more competitive than in previous elections. So, with all of this said, I want to thank the viewer who requested this specific matchup and how I believe that this would shape out. Personally, this is my prediction. You guys are subject to disagree with it. I love reading through your thoughts and comments below on how you guys would view this race and how you think it might shape out. I would love to read through your comments and see what you guys are thinking about this race as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out the Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, etc. in the bio below. Again, leave your thoughts, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Thank you guys again so much for watching.